Hey guys, quick note for our interview with Lilith Starr. There was a bit of noise in the background there. They're unfortunately invaded by ants, so sorry I couldn't get those out. But nonetheless, the interview comes in nice and clear, so just give you a heads up. Thank you.
Hey, my name's Hertzie Hertz. I'm with Minnesota Atheists and Atheist Talk, and I took a left at the Valley.
Fantastic.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith in unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you from your speakers, this is Left in the Valley. My name is Kevin, and I woke up and said, "Hey Siri," and she replied with an ad for mouthwash. Joining me is the woman who brought chips to a salsa class and realized a mistake. Hi, Nancy.
Chips to a salsa class. I got it. It took me a minute to dance around the room to figure that one out.
How you doing, my dear?
I'm doing pretty good. Having a great cup of coffee, thanks to our lovely host here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Host was the most.
Yeah, host was
It's just you and I today. The girls are out on a schnauzer experience.
I know, and loving every minute of it.
I'm sure they are. We miss them already, but
yeah.
Anyway, the show must go on. So today we'll be talking to Satanist Lilith Starr. I sometimes have a hard time saying that.
That
Lilith,
ought to be
Lilith.
fun.
Yes.
That ought to be really fun.
Talk to her about her new book.
Yep.
But first, let's do a bit of chit-chat. Oh, you know what? Even before that, I want to do some... where is it?
Mail time.
You could say some mail, but actually it's from our patron Freethinker215, and you're going to love this. Now, this is what happened. Our patron Freethinker215, swell guy, right? Superb guy, and he supports a lot of podcasts out there, including ours. Now, the thing is, I'm a bit of a doofus, and he was a patron of ours, and he sent me a message a couple of weeks ago saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm a patron, but I've never actually been charged by Patreon." I said, well, that's just odd. So I just wondered why. Well, it turns out that Patreon will not charge the patrons if you don't actually post something. They won't just take money for the sake of taking money. You actually have to post something. Oh. So last week, that's what I did. I did the first patron-only thing where I basically...
like a bonus...
Yes. I uploaded the raw audio only for the show last week, and I'm going to start doing that, I guess, for our patrons. But anyway, in the meantime, he felt he had been somewhat kind of like, I guess cheated is probably not the right word, but he felt bad that he didn't manage to give us the money. And I said, don't worry about it, man.
What a sweet guy.
He's super sweet. So what he did, he made a contribution to the NAF, which is the National Abortion Federation of Canada.
I think I'm in love with this guy already.
Yeah, so he made a contribution for in the name of Left in the Valley for the NAF. Wow. Let me pull that up here. The NAF. I was not even aware of this group. So NAF Canada is essentially, it's a professional association of abortion providers in North America. Our work supports the dedicated health care professionals who make reproductive choice a reality, as well as women they serve. They work to ensure that abortion is safe, legal, and accessible.
Wow.
And he made a contribution in the name of Left in the Valley to them.
Wow.
Yeah, so, Freethinker215, man, you're top notch as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
Kudos to you, man.
Yeah, I mean, to be involved in so many different podcasts and communities to help make the world a better place. What an outstanding guy.
So what I'm thinking I'm going to do after this as well is we're going to try to get in contact with people from NAF and try to have one of them on the show.
Oh,
it'd be interesting because I had no idea about this association, and I'm discovering about it. It's like, these people are doing important work. Yeah. And, the whole abortion thing has been in the news a lot lately. So thank you to Freethinker215 for giving me that idea and making that contribution. This guy's making the world a better place.
Yeah.
A better time.
Yeah, he's looking around to specifically find places that need support and need some money to continue to do what they do best, and that's fabulous. I mean, it's a win-win all the way around.
He's the man, for sure.
He is. Big hugs and props.
For sure, sure. Okay, in the meantime, if you're a Canadian, this week you probably saw anyway, the Toronto Raptors parade. Now, the Toronto Raptors is the Canadian basketball team from Toronto who actually won the championship for the first time in, I believe, 26 years.
It was a nail-biter.
Yes, it was.
The last two games for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you taught great people like Michael Jordan and, Charles Barkley how to dunk and all that. So Nancy knows her basketball, obviously. It was a huge parade. There was an estimated 2 million fans. This is an estimation, actually, in the lower end. There's 5.9 million people in Toronto.
Oh, they were ecstatic.
So imagine whatever city you're in and having a third of the people come to a parade.
I know.
It's huge. They say anywhere between 34% of the population of Toronto probably went to the parade. It's hard to count, but these are estimates, obviously. Nathan Phillips Square, which is in downtown Toronto, can only hold 65,000 people. So you can just imagine the sea of people there. Unfortunately, during the parade, there was a couple of gunmen that showed up and shot 4 people. Now, at this point, 4 people were shot, 6 people were arrested and charged. We're not exactly sure of the details of this. Do you think it's just a couple of rival gangs that just took opportunity of the cover of the parade to settle some scores?
What a jaw drop. I mean, this is Canada.
Yes. But I'm glad because overall, this could have been much, much worse. It was resolved quickly. Law enforcement moved in really quickly, and they arrested these guys, and then the party kept going. Overall, it really didn't disturb the event. I mean, of course, there was a few moments of panic, and some people were fleeing, but in the overall scheme of the entire day, it was actually almost a minor thing.
Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting to watch that, and to watch the law enforcement really react with cool-headedness. And just boom.
All of our best to the Toronto Police Department for being well prepared,
exactly,
and being able to function in that sea of humanity. Mm-hmm. I mean, that itself.
Like I said, 2 million people.
Yeah.
You got 4 people shot, and 2 million people. If you just look at the number, it's a grain of sand. Really, it really is.
Yeah.
Could have been much, much worse. Okay. Did you know that in 2018, Canada resettled more refugees than any other country?
I read that.
Yes. Now we got to make a distinction here. There was 92,400 refugees. Now, we're not talking about immigrants. We're not talking about people that are trying to escape. We're talking about actual refugees that made the claim they want to be a refugee. And Canada took in 28,100 of these people. And this is spread amongst 25 countries in the world.
Wow. Do you remember, when was it, 2-3 years ago, when Trump threatened the Haitians with deportation, and they headed for the border?
Yes.
And instead of saying, no, you can't come in, the Canadians put extra people on the border.
Yes.
They put extra places where they could get food, where they could get
where they
their
could be
paper,
processed quicker. Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. The U.S. came in second place with 22,900. So the U.S. did a very valiant effort as well. So that's pretty good.
But they're all sitting in detention camps.
Yeah. Now, there is 1.4 million refugees that were in need, but actually 90 of the numbers we're looking for here is the 92,400 that were resettled. So there's a much bigger number of people in need, but the ones that were taken care of and resettled, Canada was the number one country to do that.
Even in Abbotsford, our little town here, we've seen the results of that because our community accepted quite a number of Syrian refugees, who are very visible in the community and have been accepted beautifully. And
this is one of the things that angers me about the conservative message about all these immigrants and these refugees coming in, and they're just loafers. And no. At the time, I was working in sales for a hydraulic company, and a Syrian refugee had been hired as an employee, and he was so grateful, and he was such a gracious man. You know, he was in Canada, he was rebuilding his life for his family, he had a good job, and you know what? He was Employee of the Year because that guy was going beyond the call of duty. And the company I was working for, you know, made a point of saying, you know, and they actually gave him a trip, I believe, a small trip, worth a couple $1,000s.
But that's pretty typical of the refugees that come over because, you know, even when our grandparents began the Great Migration, the minute they hit the shores, it was, we're here to build a better life.
Yes.
And gratefulness was the number one emotion.
Yes.
And I think it stays that way.
These refugees, you know, they're not seeking, you know, an easy meal.
No.
They're fleeing something like war and with their family. So you got a country like Canada that accepts them. You know what? Yeah, they're going to play by the rules. Yes, they will pay their taxes and you charge them whatever. You know what? I don't care. If I was a refugee, let's say a Universe X here, Kevin's a refugee from Canada going to another country, and you're charging me $100,000. If it means saving my life and the life of my family, I'll be glad to pay that. You know, the conservative attack that these people are just moochers and coming to take your job, it has to stop. It is not reality.
No, it's a I mean, we could cover the U.S. immigration, but we won't. But the humanity is still here in Canada.
Yes.
It will be restored, but I think the typical refugee is someone who works hard, and if the political point of view is different, it's being used for an agenda that we don't even want to get into.
Exactly.
And not here in Canada, mostly.
By the way, Canada is the 9th largest recipient of new asylum seekers worldwide.
The ninth?
9th.
Wow.
So that's not too bad.
I'll have to look up and see who's number. That's a good top 10.
Probably, well, you know, it would probably be number 1.
Yeah.
The United States would probably be number 1, I would think.
We'll see, but that's interesting.
It's an interesting step.
Yeah.
Of course, this week we also saw the tension rise between Iran and the U.S. Iran shot down a U.S. RQ-4A Global Hawk drone, which this
someplace
is a big drone that costs about
be disputed, still being disputed.
That's right. It cost $100 million. Iran said it was violated their airspace. The U.S. said it was international waters. What kind of scares me about this is, you know, this is Donald Trump we're talking about, of course. You know, he comes in a tweet and he says, quote, "We were cocked and loaded to retaliate." And then he says that he stopped the attack 10 minutes before the strike due to when he asked a general how many casualties would the strike cost, and he said about 150 people. And Donald Trump said, well, you know, this is way bit more of a price than just taking down a drone. Now, I don't know how I feel about this because at some point, I agree with him. Killing 150 people in retaliation to a drone, you're right. He's correct. But this is Donald Trump we're talking about. Did you know? And now the reports I saw this morning, I didn't have time to look into them. The reports saying this morning that all this was a lie. There was not even a discussion of strike and retaliation. So I don't know what to think here. Well, we have this buffoon here that could be just making up a war in his mind.
I've heard a number of different things. The story that's coming out in the news that seems most credible, but 48 hours from now it's going to change, is that Trump was fully informed about the casualty numbers, and for one reason or another, maybe he didn't understand it or whatever, and then at the last minute he asked the question again, how many people, and then that part of it is an absolute lie. Yeah. And one reason that you know it's a lie is because he used the word, it wasn't proportionate. And there's no way he would have used the word proportionate unless it had been given to him earlier.
Yeah.
So we don't know. But the other factor that has to come into this is that he's in campaign mode. Anything that makes him look like a hero, whether it has to do with, you know, throwing the South American people out of the country and with the ICE raids, or presenting himself as the guy who stopped the war in Iran, he's going to do it. So I think whatever happened, And then what he did is take it over in campaign mode and put himself in I'm the hero. And to use the word proportionate, that's got too many syllables for him. It has to come from. And then the other story was that he changed it at the last minute because Fox News, one of the Fox News anchors, I forget what his name is, said, no, you can't, Trump can't do this because if he goes to war with Iran, there goes his election.
Yeah.
So he watches, he gets a briefing and then watches Fox News and then makes up his mind, according to what the anchors at Fox tell him.
How scary the thought that you have a president with the nuclear codes, just about on the precipice of going to war with a big country like Iran, just as a campaign bluff or as a psych, or you can't even trust what the man says at all. No. There's like 3 different versions of this, and all 3 of them are plausible, and all 3 of them are possible, probable lies too.
It'll all come out, but you're right.
It's incredible.
We have no idea. All we can hope for is somebody is holding him back.
Could you imagine our prime minister saying, "Oh yes, we're going to go to war against, I don't know, let's say Norway, over that moose thing." Remember that? Mm-hmm. and all of a sudden these allegations come out that no, it never actually happened. It'd be a huge scandal.
Well, this is the way his whole presidency has gone. But it's like it's outrageous, and everybody goes, "It's outrageous." But then nothing happens to do anything.
Yeah, they all say it's outrageous, but no action is ever undertaken to correct it. I don't know what's going on in the States. I really don't know what's going on in the States. God, like I said, for the life of me, if somebody came in to me tomorrow and say, "Kevin, I'm giving you a job in the States, $500,000 a year for you to move to the States," I would say no. I
take it though. I go. That's okay. $500,000.
You got the citizenship.
I figured there's got to be some influence money there that
It's that country's gone to the dogs. It's like, my God, what's happening there?
We just have to put. My humble opinion, we've got to put our faith with the Dems, even though they can snatch defeat from the jaws of victory really quick. But that's where the Democrats and investigative journalists,
yes,
and women.
All right, moving on. Last but certainly not least. This week we saw the Quebec Bill 21 go through. Now this bill from the province of Quebec bans religious symbols for teachers, cops, and public servants. This was enacted by the Premier François Legault. The vote came to 73 to 35. This has been a controversial bill. They've tried to pass something like that before. We've talked about this before. At the time, I believe it was Pauline Marois was the premier. I agree with the bill. Personally, this is my opinion, it's only my opinion. I agree with the bill in many ways. At the time, I didn't agree with some of it because what they said, there was a huge cross in the Legislative Assembly in Quebec, and they didn't want to take it down because they were saying it was historical. Well, this one, they did take it down. Even though the premier says, yeah, it's actually more historical than religious. But they took down the religious symbol. They also said that they would grandfather in the existing religious symbols for people that already wear them, that work for the government. But it would also forbid anyone giving or receiving state services to have a covered face or these kind of religious symbol. There's been a lot of criticism about that bill. I'm almost siding with the conservatives on the side, which is one of the rare things I side with. And here's the reason. I was reading, for example, Hemant Metten. He was talking about the friendly atheist. He was talking about how he thinks the bill goes too far. There's going to be a not just a language police in Quebec, but also a religious police. Okay, I gotta say this. Okay, as a Canadian and as a Quebecer, you cannot look at this bill through the same eyes that you do, especially if you're an American, about how things go in America, right? Americans always have this notion that government's out to get you, right? And Canadians don't look at government the same way. We look at the government as we participate in the government, therefore it's the will of the people. when Hammond Mehta said something about, having a police force, they were talking about the same kind of things happening in France when France decided to ban the burqa and all that stuff. It's not like they're going to designate an extra police force to go like they do in Saudi Arabia and give out like the morality police. That's not going to happen. Okay, it's not that type of country. It's just people are normal, right? I mean, it's just, for example, you're going to get your assistant check or something like that, and you're the clerk giving out these checks. No, you can't wear your face veil there because you're representing the government. I agree with that. I completely agree with that. I think that the criticism of that law are way, way, way overblown. And I think part of that is because, there's a difference in culture here between the Canadian culture, the American culture, and the French Canadian culture. Because there's not going to be armed police knocking on your door, and you got a little Star of David on a necklace, and they're going to pull the gun on you. That's not going to happen. What's most likely going to happen is that you let's say you Nancy, you're Jewish, and let's say, for example, you're on welfare, and you're going to walk into the office, and you get your little Star of David, and people's probably going to say, could you just tuck that into your shirt, please? That's all that's going to happen here. I think the criticism of this is like way overblown because it's mostly led by the U.S. And in the U.S., they have this thing about government interfering in people's life, like the government, because their entire history is based on that. Their entire history is based on rebelling against the government, right? This is exactly how the United States started. That is not how Canadians view the government. So I would be really, really interested in having maybe not a debate, but at least a very good discussion with some of our American friends that are on the opposite side of me.
I think it's a great open question at this point. Because I at this point I tend to go with the idea that if I'm Jewish or Catholic or whatever it is that I am, and we're in a secular country where we know that the government is secular and we're also diverse, that if I wear my Star of David outside, or veils, that's a whole other category for me. But to me, we ought to be able to recognize that we are diverse, but when we're sitting in the seat that says I'm employed by the government, that Star of David is not going to affect my relationship with you or what you ask me to do on behalf of the government. And it shows that I'm proud of who I am, and we need to respect each other. So I'm okay with religious symbols as long as the person wearing that religious symbol doesn't treat me as an inferior and treats me with respect. Yeah. So that's where I stand now.
And the law makes that provision too, right? It says, you're working for the government, you're wearing your business attire or something like that. You go home at night and you want to get into your house and you want to put on the full burqa, by all means, go for it.
Absolutely.
By all means. It doesn't say you can't, right? And I think this is kind of missed in translation here. Yeah. And I think, like I said, the criticism, especially coming from our friends down south of the border, I think is overblown. It's hyperbolic a bit. You also have to come to the point that, we're not going to open that can of worms, so let's leave that for another show. But, at what point... I understand that, we love freedom and we love liberty and, everybody loves that. But to think that we're going to turn our country completely secular just by promoting more liberty is not going to happen. At some point, I mean, especially when it's ironic to think that government shouldn't interfere at all, especially in the States when you consider their constitution is secular. It's secular by law. So to think that the government should never ever make any law that states that promotes secularism in the country is... it's a dream team. It's a dream. If you really think that just by saying, let's be secular, let's be friendly, let's be free, let's not make any laws to impede any way, shape, or form freedom in any way, shape, or form, and that's going to turn the country secular, it's not going to happen. So all these years, we have these atheists that are fighting to have the country, the secular laws respected. But at the same time, when you have a government that actually makes a law that enshrines secularism, because Quebec is actually, by doing that, is actually becomes the first quote-unquote state/province to actually do so, all of a sudden it's criticized. Say, this is exactly what we want. It's not secularism at the end of a gun here. This is basically the government of Quebec saying, look, we're a secular state. You have to respect that. It's the same kind of argument that you hear from people that say, well, this guy's Muslim, but he's a cashier, but he doesn't want to touch your pork because he's Muslim. And people would say, well, this don't work there. I mean, that's the same thing. If your religious symbol is so precious to you that you cannot bear the thought of having it off your body for the workday, then don't work in a government position. It's that simple. They're not putting a gun to your head here,
That's. I mean, as I said, there's a rich area for discussion.
Absolutely,
that's there.
And we should have that discussion.
We should have the discussion.
Absolutely. And I'm going to get our friends from the other podcast. We'll have that discussion. But anyway, I really think it's
a start.
It's a start, I really think there's something, like I said, between the cultures of our American friends and us and the French Canadians, which of course I'm very well versed in, obviously. I think there's room to maneuver there, but it's nowhere near what the criticism I've been reading from the Friendly Atheists and all that. No, there's not going to be a police that's going to knock on your door and says, "Hey, do you have a crucifix on you? Well, we're taking away your welfare check or whatever." And that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But when laws are written at first, they're also written kind of broad, right? Because they have to encompass a lot of things. And over time, they have amendments that they're specified, and they're trimmed, That's what happens. So anyway, contrary to many people, and are probably going to criticize me about this, I applaud this. I think this is a good first step. Mm-hmm. And Quebec is following pretty much the example that France did, right? I remember France a couple of years ago when they took this woman, they arrested her on the beach, and she was wearing a full burkini thing or whatever that she was wearing. They weren't arresting her because, oh my God, we're trying to repress you. It's like they were trying to, the mentality of the French was, this is France, chill, and Quebec is going the same way. This is just relax, okay? You don't need to worry about all this shit. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that for now.
That's all right. I mean, things like that always bring out controversy, and always bring out people who are going to go to the extreme. That's it. The world is now coming to an end. This is the worst thing that happened. And then people say, no, this is a great first step. It's an opening up of better things to come. So everybody, that's what a democracy is. Yes. And both sides are trying to find a balance where secular and the secular part and the diversity part can come together and live harmoniously, in an ideal world, which isn't going to happen. But how close can we get to, being able to give everybody equal standing, in the democracy? So good thing. And
you mark my words, okay? Right now,
I'm marking them.
Mark my words. This law, as controversial as it is a good thing. It's going to become a good thing. The history is going to look at it as it was a good thing.
Oh yeah, it's going to take.
It's not going to be a law that's designed for tyrants or anything like that. This is actually, for once, I'm actually siding. I can't imagine I'm saying that. I'm actually siding with the conservatives on this side. They're actually correct about this. Yeah. If you want your country to be secular, not to be overrun by a religious zealot, it's not going to happen by just being free, freedom. It's not going to happen like that. You have to make a stand at some point and say, no, we are secular by law, and this means the law. Anyway, moving on.
Good topic, though.
For sure. We'll have to talk about it some more.
And any of our listeners that would like to weigh in and send us a text or an email or let us know.
LatinValley@outlook.com. You think I'm full of crap? By all means, please. Send it to me. Explain your point, and we'll talk about this. We'll bring it on the show if we have to.
Absolutely.
All right, my dear. You have a top 10 for us?
I do, and it's a weird one.
Ooh.
And sometimes they're just whimsical, and sometimes they're weird. So today, you and I are entering the world of the weird. Okay, and this is 10 epidemics of mass hysteria.
Oh.
I know, isn't that a weird one?
Wow.
So we're going to go from the number 10 all the way to the number 1. So just kind of explaining a little bit. Mass hysteria is a psychological phenomenon which has been documented since about the Middle Ages. And the fear of the unknown, political turmoil, a lot of things, need for social acceptance, a lot of things contribute toward mass hysteria. But this isn't like one or two people like your neighbors. This is like a majority of people in this particular area become affected by whatever this epidemic happens to be. So number 10 is the dancing plague of 1518.
The dancing plague.
The dancing plague. So this is kind of like, you talk about dance till you drop. Well,
I thought that was disco.
Yeah, I think this is this may be the roots of disco right here. So a case of dancing plague broke out in Strasbourg, talking about France, in the French Alsace region. It started with one lone dancer, and then over 400 people eventually took to the streets, dancing non-stop for days on end.
The first flash mob.
It was. and people were collapsing from exhaustion, and some actually died of heart attacks or stroke. I know, it lasted for over a month.
Holy.
So you talk about a disco, I mean, that,
Talk about disco fever,
talk about disco fever with a little crystal ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, interestingly enough, do you think that most of those affected were male or female?
God.
No, don't be politically correct. Just tell me.
My thought was going to be half and half. It's France. So as soon as the women are dancing, the guys will jump in, I think.
Yeah, they're mostly female.
Oh, really?
So that brings a whole other dimension to it, one way or the other. Of course, the word hysteria, you realize, comes from the womb.
Yes.
So who knows? But anyway, 1518, the dancing plague.
Wow.
So that...
Before shop to your job, you got dance to your job.
Yeah, it was almost like people were on LSD or something. Yeah. Okay, so, which is kind of wild. Okay, number 9 is, I'm going to butcher the name of this one, the Tanganyika laughing epidemic.
Oh, God.
So now this is in 1962, going from 1518 to 9. This is a leap. Anyway, 3 students at a boarding school in it's modern-day Tanzania. They began laughing uncontrollably, and it gets so contagious that 95 students suddenly joined in. You know how it is when somebody tells you, and you can't stop.
Somebody laugh, you can't help yourself but start laughing with them. Yeah.
No. So these bouts of uncontrolled hysteria lasted from a few hours to more than 2 weeks. It just was.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And the people who were affected experienced laughing, crying, pain, fainting. Teachers were unable to conduct lessons. This is 1962.
Wow.
And the school had to shut down for 2 months while it was brought under control.
Shut down due to laughter.
Just laughing. And reportedly, it spread to surrounding villages and to some surrounding schools, and there were over 1,000 people who were affected from this one little school where a couple of kids started, to laugh.
My God.
They started to look to see if there were any toxins or contaminated food, but they couldn't figure out. There was no medical cause that they could find.
They say 15 seconds of hard laughter is almost the equivalent of an orgasm. So when you laugh like really, really hard for a long time, it is exhausting. It really is. You come out of there, it's like you almost have to take a break.
Yeah, but they finally pinned it down to the stress of this boarding school. But the other people who were involved, they didn't have that same stress. But it was like yawning when, it just spread.
Wow.
So can you picture yourself...
Laughing for 2 weeks?
Epidemic?
Well, I could picture myself laughing for a long time, but for 2 weeks, maybe not.
2 weeks, yeah. Number 8, excuse me. Number 8 has a funny name of the Mad Gasser outbreak.
I like it already.
Yeah, so this is like during World War II, and there's this little town in Illinois called Mattoon, Illinois. I've been there.
Okay, of course you have.
Yeah, of course I have. Anyway, they became convinced that they were under attack from a phantom anesthesiologist who was attempting to gas them as they slept. Right away, this is.
How do you jump to that conclusion?
It only takes a couple of crazies, and then it goes from there. These victims complained that there was a strange odor in their homes, and just before they were struck with symptoms, and the symptoms ranged from paralysis to coughing, nausea, and vomiting.
Wow.
So the first report came at the end of August 1944, when somebody, one of the residents of Mattoon, awoke to a strange smell and suffered a fit of nausea and vomiting. His wife was then paralyzed and unable to leave her bed. Then police received over 20 reports of gassing over the following 2 weeks. And then they had a panic in Mattoon, and then people thought there were nightly gassings, but they could never find anybody that did it. So all the victims made a speedy recovery. Surprise, surprise. Investigators explained the incident as a combination of odors from a nearby industrial plant, and then mass hysteria as it came, as thinking there was a
psychosomatic.
Yeah.
Or the Joker was there with Batman, because the Joker uses gas all the time and he makes people laugh. So these two are connected: the laughing for 2 weeks and the gassing.
Yeah. Okay. Number 7, mewing nuns.
Mewing nuns.
Nuns in religious orders across France and Germany went barking mad during go back to the 15th century. During medieval times, many women entered convents against their will, being forced into a life of celibacy and poverty by their parents. And because of the lifestyle there, in 1491, a nun in a large, again in France, is it running a pattern here?
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, a nun in a French convent began mewing like a cat, and the sister nuns soon followed her into strange behavior until the convent was overrun with cat imitation plague. And the villagers were disturbed by the daily mewing to the extent that a platoon of soldiers had to come in. And
what?
They were stationed outside the convent. Yeah, and the nuns were told they'd be beaten with rods if they continued to meow. Can you imagine walking by the convent and meow coming from, and then the soldiers outside making it even worse by telling they were going to be beaten? Anyway, so so then nunneries across the region had similar epidemics of nuns imitating cats, dogs, birds, biting, and all kinds. So the Catholic Church said it was demon possession.
Oh, of course, the Catholic Church would say something like that.
Okay.
No, of course.
I know.
Cats.
Number 6, strawberries with sugar virus. In 2006, going up to 2006, 300 Portuguese children were hit with an unexplained illness. And the kids explained of dizziness, breathing difficulties, rashes, and it only affected school children, and it was only in schools around this little town in Portugal. So a teen soap opera that was called Strawberries with Sugar was identified as the problem. An episode had aired a few days before the outbreak in which a strange virus was striking children at the show's school, and then the kids who were watching it...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So number 5, I know that talk about teens.
So far it's telling me that people are humans... are sheep. My God, we're just following along.
I know. It's amazing, but it does show you that the herd mentality takes over. So number 5, the Meissen trembling disease.
Oh,
and this is in Germany. Several schools were hit in 1905. The interesting thing is we're going back and forth between the 1500s and 2000s, and there's no difference really in the type of behavior.
Although the technology has improved greatly, the human being is still as primitive as he or she ever was.
Yeah, this is a student in Meissen, Germany, began trembling and twitching, And by in October, and by May the following year, over 200 students. This is a pattern too. Seems like there's a lot of students.
Yes.
Young kids. 200 students were affected with the strange twitching epidemic. And it was only when the students were given writing tasks and weren't present when performing other lessons. So that's one. Number 4.
As a side note, when you use the word muscle, it actually comes from musculus, which is actually about mice, because they say when you're flexing your muscle, it feels like it's a mouse moving under your skin.
Huh.
Side note, now you know.
Yeah, they treated some of these kids with electric shocks. And my trembling would stop if I was given the choice of an electric shock.
Well, they should have brought those nuns from the convent.
Yeah.
Well, they could just meow after the mice and that would stop.
Yeah. I knew you'd find a great solution. Number 4 is called the Hollandwell incident. And this is a swooning epidemic. Again, a group of school children in England were moving out of France.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Moving out of Europe.
1986, only 500 school children had traveled from all around to compete in a marching band competition, and they were all gathered and ready to perform when suddenly they began to collapse. 300 children and adults dropped at the showground. Mass panic, emergency crews, the whole deal. The crisis was growing. And then later, all the victims complained of having experienced a sore throat and a burning sensation in the eyes. They really couldn't find anything. They looked to see if there was any crop dusting or something, but they couldn't find anything. But they thought that the cause ultimately was the heat of the day and pre-performance jitters. But, for 200-300 people to be affected, that's a lot. So getting toward the end here.
Yeah, we're getting close.
Number 3, Blackburn faintings. Again, school children in the English town of Blackburn were hit with a fainting epidemic, and that lasted several days in 1965. And it was outside the Blackburn Cathedral when Princess Margaret was to arrive and open because of restorations, and it was sunny, and 140 children fainted. But the following day, another 98 people were hit with the mysterious fainting epidemic. So at the end of the week, 300 children had been affected. So they closed the school, they inspected everything, couldn't find anything except perhaps Princess Margaret. So this is an interesting one. This is number 2. I love this name. The Würzburg Screaming Epidemic.
Oh, boy.
There may be a title of a movie there.
Yeah.
Okay. This is in a nunnery. Nunnery and school children seem to be, avoid...
I'm seeing a pattern here.
That's right. Avoid meowing and being at school.
You got a Hollywood hit in there somewhere.
Yeah. This is in 1979 in Würzburg, Germany. As with sort of like the meowing of the nuns a few centuries earlier, it was probably brought on by boredom and frustration about being in a religious life. Anyway, the sub-prior, the head sister, initially denied entry into the convent for a young woman who was prone to convulsions, and the decision was overturned, and so she was accepted, and then the other nuns began to imitate her, and so they blamed it all on demonic possession. So,
I love how the Catholics answer everything is demonic possession.
Yeah, so victims experience...
She's got convulsion, demonic possession. She's meowing, demonic possession.
Yeah, exactly.
She tripped, demonic possession.
Yeah, screaming, writhing, foaming at the mouth, entering a trance-like states. But I don't know if I'm trying to look. So the poor nun with the convulsions was coerced into confessing to witchcraft.
Oh,
and nice. Wait a minute, it gets worse. She was beheaded.
What?
She was beheaded for crimes against the church, ending the screaming sessions from the other nuns.
Well, yeah.
I would imagine that'd be like,
the last scream before the axe fell down. That was it. Yeah.
I know, but can you? I mean, it was in the 1700s, but they did. They just.
Yeah, well.
That's it. extreme.
It's always been the church's thing. It's a demon. Let's kill him. It's always been their solution to everything.
Okay, last. Are you up for the last?
Sure.
I mean, this is. Do you feel like participate? You're okay so far? Nothing.
This one is going to be in France. It's going to be a nun-child, nun and a child in the school.
Okay, and you're not feeling like you need to twitch or faint or meow.
Not yet.
We're not yet. Okay, here we go. As long as you're okay. This is called the face scratcher hysteria.
Ooh.
Okay, now in really poorly educated communities, sometimes the villagers turn to folklore and mythology to explain the unknown. So this is in 2002.
Get out of here.
No, so there was a belief that aliens were scratching the faces of victims at night, and that's what sparked this panic in a very small town. Have you heard of the country in Pradesh?
Pradesh?
Yeah, Uttar Pradesh.
That rings familiar, but where is it? I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, this is like 2002. And the residents reported a brightly lit object that flew sideways and was attacking victims, leaving scratch marks on their face. So the reports ranged from football-sized objects to a UFO the size of a large tortoise that flew at victims, leaving scratches and burn marks. So this was an initial isolated incident, and then rumors of the alien attacker spread all over the place, widespread panic, nighttime vigilante groups were set up to scare away the face scratcher, and residents demanded that police capture the extraterrestrial assailants. The only confirmed, just like only makes a difference in this sentence, were from police firing into large crowds to disperse protesters who had gathered to demand action. So explanation for the phenomena ranged from insect plague, lightning balls, that attacked victims as they slept outside, and it disappeared once monsoon system hit.
Well, if you were wondering, Uttar Pradesh, it is part of India. It's just on the border of Nepal. It's the northern part of India. It's I guess would be east of Pakistan, and just on the border of Nepal.
Okay.
And and if you keep going east, you have Bangladesh. So that's where it is.
Yeah, but 2002.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, the Hindu gods, they're active as usual.
Have you ever taken part, not in a mass hysteria, I know neither one of us, but have you ever gotten caught up in one of those laughing things where you just were with a group of people?
Yes.
And for like a half hour you couldn't stop?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
You got a joke, and the joke is funny, but it's not as funny as the person laughing about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes even some shows that I listen to, there are some laughs that are just absolutely intoxicating. The joke could not even be good, but that person is laughing, and it's making you laugh and giggle as well, even though the joke might not be that funny.
Yeah.
So it is totally contagious.
Have you ever started to laugh and then you couldn't stop and you were the only one in the room and you just... I'm trying to think whether you can do it as an isolated... isolated incidents, or I think you need that contagion effect, don't you?
Well, maybe. There are probably some therapy groups that they use laughter as therapy.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
But that's not one of those you can't stop. I mean, you literally, it's out of control.
There have been some instances in my life, though, you're laughing so hard, and you're like with a group of friends, and you're laughing at the joke so hard, and you're laughing for 5 minutes, and you just really have a hard time stopping to the point that, you almost sit down on the couch and say, okay, I need a minute to recover from all this laughter. Yeah, that has certainly happened in my life a lot.
But I think some political rallies and things like that, where people get swept up by an emotion.
Yes.
And they really, they're also, when there are anything where there's a group of people, you get caught up in that herd mentality. These are just extreme examples.
We'll just have to point out the Trump rally for that.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's putting on that hat. I think that's what does it.
Thank you, my dear. Well, Kirsten's not here, so I guess I'll have to do the Another Brilliant Moment.
Ooh.
Brought to you by religion. Now, there's a show called Good Omens.
Oh, I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
It's a show. Basically they got like the angel and the devil on one side and the other, right? And they're trying to stop the Armageddon, if you wish. Well, 20,000 Christians demanded Netflix cancel Good Omens. They signed a petition demanding that Netflix cancel the program Good Omens, a television series adapted from Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman's 1990 fantasy novel. The only problem is Good Omens is on Amazon, not Netflix. Netflix has nothing to do with this.
Oh. That's the trouble with having too many apps. You don't know which one to blame.
Adding insult to injury, the series is already completed. And it was a limited series based on the book, and there was no series there's no series to cancel. It's already done. It's made and done. So, the 6-part series was released last month, starring David Tennant as the Demon Crowley and Michael Sheen as the angel Aziraphale, I guess it would be, who collaborate to prevent the coming of the Antichrist and an imminent apocalypse, which is pretty much what I said. The petition, sponsored by a Christian group called Return to Order... Maybe they should try to return to research. Tell Netflix to cancel the blasphemous Good Omens series, claim that the series is a mockery of God's order and religion, and expresses anger that an angel and demon are good friends. Of course, that can't possibly happen, right?
No.
And God is voiced by a woman. On top of that, I haven't watched the series, but now I almost want to. In addition, the petition complains that the Antichrist is portrayed as a normal kid that has special powers. The petition complains about the attempt to make Satanism appear normal, light, and acceptable, and concludes with a demand to stop promoting evil.
Yeah, they don't want that fantasy to interfere with their fantasy.
Of course.
Yeah, you can't do that.
And you know what? We're going to be talking to a Satanist real soon here. After the pause. And you know what? When you talk to her and you talk to a Satanist, they're way more normal than a lot of the Christians we ever been with.
What a shocker.
Yes. Of course, I just love how the Christians like to promote themselves as being so victims of everything, right? They're oppressed, don't you know?
If there's an opportunity for some of these extreme Christians to come out and show how wacko they are, they'll take it, they'll do it. They'll do it.
Oh, so now I want to watch that show now. It's on Amazon, so I guess I'll have to order that in. But, it's a good idea. It's a good concept. And we had these same kind of situations years ago. It was Matt Damon and Ben Affleck did a movie called Dogma. And it was kind of like the same kind of thing. A couple of angels fall to earth, and, instead of having a flaming sword, it says, well, I can't use this. So he uses like a Magnum 44 as a gun instead. And God was portrayed by a woman, and Christians had a horrible time with this, right? Because, it's a bit like when they released that movie Noah as well, right? It's not biblical enough.
I know, they take it as though the movie was made specifically to target them. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's entertainment for most of the world. No, it's another way that they're discriminating against their beliefs. They're taking it so personally.
It's a fantasy series that takes characters and they just modify them to make it, they're way too literal with their imaginary bullshit.
That's okay. I hope they continue, because it keeps our little episodes going. From we never ever will run out. Brilliant moments.
We could do an entire show with just another brilliant moment.
Oh, we
just
could.
About every week we could.
Now that would start hysterical laughter and meowing. How far could we get, do you think? 10 minutes and I'm gone.
Oh, the hysterical laughter started by Left in the Valley podcast. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. I'd be barking in 10 minutes. That's it.
All right. That was good, actually. So let's take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll be talking to Lilith Starr with her new book. So stay with us.
Hi, I'm God, and I just want to make sure to tell you not to listen to Unapologetics on Stitcher and SoundCloud. That's Unapologetics with an X at the end. But, definitely do not listen to the show. I mean, I swear to me, alright, I will murder my son. I kind of already did that, but just don't listen to the show, okay? Hey, Lucy.
Can you not call me that, okay? We already went over what my name is, okay? It's Lucifer.
All right, look, Luce. You want to come with me? I'm going to go fuck with this guy, Joe.
No, don't do that, okay? Can you just leave him alone?
Yeah, I'm gonna kill his family.
No, don't do that.
I'm gonna give him sores all over his body.
Don't do that. That's disgusting.
And, I'm gonna kill all of his livestock.
Stop saying things. Just stop.
Yeah, I'm gonna blame the whole thing on you. All right, let's go, bud. Remember, don't listen to Unapologetics on Stitcher and SoundCloud.
Hey, definitely listen to that show. It's awesome. It's really cool. He's really a dick.
I heard that.
Attention, fellow atheist podcast listeners.
We are the Godless Heathens Podcast.
Here's the details with no fine print.
You got new episodes available every other Sunday.
Sunday!
There's 3 of us, just like the Holy Trinity.
I'm Don.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jerry.
Coming to you from a spare bedroom in exurban Atlanta,
where we'll examine the crossroads of politics and religion, but from the secular perspective.
Sometimes we get heavy, sometimes we get deep.
And no one is above reproach or mockery, especially each other.
It's more of what you want and less of what you don't.
So open your hearts and minds to the Godless Heathens in your podcast rotation.
And you just might learn something too.
Okay, just think about the Muslims at this moment who are blowing themselves up, convinced that they are agents of God's will. There is absolutely nothing that Dr. Craig can say against their behavior in moral terms, apart from his own faith-based claim that they're praying to the wrong God. If they had the right God, what they were doing would be good on divine command theory. Now, I'm obviously not saying that Dr. Craig or all religious people are psychopaths and psychotics, but this to me is the true horror of religion. Okay, it allows perfectly decent and sane people to believe by the billions what only lunatics could believe on their own. Okay, if you wake up tomorrow morning thinking that saying a few Latin words over your pancakes is going to turn them into the body of Elvis Presley, okay, you have lost your mind. But if you think more or less the same thing about a cracker and the body of Jesus, you're just a Catholic.
Well, a return guest certainly has been one of her favorites in the past. She is a published author. She was leading the group of Satanists, and she's a snappy dresser and a snazzy dancer. Lilith Starr, thank you so much for coming back and Left of the Valley.
Thank you so much for having me back on.
Now, I gotta ask you right off the bat, how come you stopped sacrificing goats now?
Did you want this poor woman to hang up before she even had a chance to introduce herself? Oh, my goodness.
Lilith, for those of us that, it's been a while since you've been on the show, but maybe you'd be so kind to give us a quick bio as to who Lilith Starr is.
Yes, certainly. My name is Lilith Starr. I'm a Satanist. I started the Seattle chapter of the Satanic Temple way back in 2014, and I've been leading it since then. And I recently stepped down to devote more time to the book I'm working on.
So when you stepped down from it, because I was under the impression it was a bit like Highlander. You guys had to kill the head leader to ascend to that position, but apparently it's not like that.
Yeah.
They can only be one.
I was lucky I had a really great woman, Siri, ready to take over, so I felt like I could leave with a clear conscience, you know?
Or maybe it was more like Star Wars. It was a Sith thing. There's only two, a master and an apprentice.
So even though you're going on to things that, give you more expression and give you another outlet, a creative outlet in a lot of ways, what are you going to miss about stepping down?
Oh my gosh, so much. Like basically for me, that job was my life. In some ways, I felt like the chapter because I always kind of had to be cognizant of what was going on externally and then internally. The biggest thing I'm really going to miss is just working with other people because I do love working in a team. So I'm going to miss that the most for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you accomplished an awful lot. You gave everybody a great foundation for the group, and you gave them some pretty big shoes to step into.
Yeah.
But you're still a member of the group, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's my family now.
Yeah. You get a free Ouija board when you join the group. Well, maybe for audience that might not be aware of the Satanist group, maybe you'll give like a quick introduction, a quick description of who they are, because God knows you guys are at the mercy of so many rumors, and I'm not helping here with me trying to be funny here with the goat sacrificing and all that stuff. People might say, what's going on here?
Satan. Yeah. Okay, so the Satanic Temple is a religion. It's a religious group. We actually just got granted religion status, tax-exempt religion status.
That's true.
Yeah, by the IRS. And so that's kind of the, highest honor in terms of religion that the American government can award you.
So now you don't have to divulge whenever Satan comes in and just fills in your coffers, right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, so it's a non-theistic organization. Basically, we see Satan as a symbol, so there's no worshiping of Satan or belief in Satan or God, but we use Satan as our symbol for rebelling against tyranny. And a big part of the Satanic Temple is we put a lot of work into defending church-state separation across the world, but especially in America. So we're well known for a lot of activism that we've done there, trying to put a giant 8-foot statue of,
the Baphomet.
Yeah, the Baphomet, goat-headed deity on the same state lawn as 10 Commandments. That's kind of what we're really well known for. But it's a very young organization. It was founded just in 2013. So it's still very young and still growing, and it's a very exciting time to be part of the organization.
It is, because considering what you've accomplished and the strategies that you've used, to enforce separation of church and state and to go after, people who want to be the privileged religion, in the U.S., it's remarkable the amount of the results that you've gotten, by continually pushing and prodding and using Christianity against itself in a lot of ways. So it's admirable.
It's beyond that, because I've always lamented on this very show that there's a lot of atheists out there, but I call them apatheists. It's like they'll say something like, "Yeah, we're right. We have the math on our side. We have the science on our side. We have the laws on our side." But I always say, that doesn't stop the Christians from trying. Right? They're always on the offensive. And then, of course, the counter to that is a group like Lilith and the Satanists and all that, because they go in and they actually do the groundwork with fantastic results.
Exactly.
And every time I see an article, it's like I just love these guys.
Well, we have a huge advantage over many secular groups in that we are actually a religion.
Yes.
So, most atheist groups are very much not a religion, and that gives you a certain amount of power. But actually being a religion, just like Christianity, means we have the exact same rights. And so that's where we can really make a difference, is just by claiming those same rights. Like, oh, you want to put Christianity in public schools? Okay, well, now you're going to have to put Satanism in there.
Yeah, exactly. And so many Satanist groups have done so much fantastic work. I just love that video. I think it was in Florida. They were doing an invocation at the beginning of a city council or something like that. And in come this guy with his hooded black robe. And he raises his hands and he's about to invocate something, and all the Christians start standing up, open their Bible, they're reading passages of the Bible, some kind of counter spell to whatever he was going to say. It was absolutely brilliant to see the fear of these people, thinking they're just like primitive 1630, so we're just going to open our Bible and we're just going to say the power of Christ compels you, and the hoping this guy's going to melt away or something.
Right?
Yeah, it's brilliant, and Lilith, of course, knows this. I'm just propping up the strategy, is that the brilliant is that it's obvious.
Yes.
Instead of saying don't do that, and creating, that disharmony and creating that antagonism is, well, you do it. We have the right to do it too. Live with it, and they can't stand it. It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah, nobody wants Satan in the government, so that it kind of makes a lot of people consider, well, maybe we shouldn't have any religion in government.
I call it the ridiculous in action, because they have a statue of the Ten Commandments and say, well, it's perfectly normal, until you put an 8-foot statue of the goat-headed Baphomet there, and you say, this is bloody freaking ridiculous, but it's there. It's there, and it has that huge impact, and I just love it. I just love you guys. Oh, perfect. But today we are talking about your book, which you call The Happy Satanist.
Yes, that's right.
So what was the genesis of that?
So this was a book of essays that I had written for the Satanism Facebook page a number of years ago, back when it was being run sort of like a newspaper or a magazine. And I wrote these essays sort of right after I had converted, as you might say, to Satanism. And they kind of cover the time in my life when I was finally getting rid of my addiction. So I was a drug addict for 17 years of my life, like the major part of my adult life. And I had been trying to get clean in 12-step programs for almost a decade. And I was not having any luck. And then when I found Satanism, it turned me around. And it eventually led me to be able to get rid of the addiction and move on and, have a healthy life when I could actually get stuff done instead of being stuck in the addiction. So that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah.
So what was it that drew you to Satanism and allowed you to leave the addictions behind?
Well, let's face it. Have you seen Lucifer? Have you seen Satan in a lot of shows they portray him? He's a sexy beast, man.
Right? No, seriously. And
they never make him look like a troll. He's a really good-looking guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it about the group where you said, this is what I need to really be the best me I can be?
Well, funny you say that about being cute, because it started with a guy. A very cute guy, and that was my husband, Eric. And I fell in love with him. He was a Satanist, and he had the Satanic Bible and the Satanic Rituals by Anton LaVey. We got together, our world kind of exploded. We ended up on the streets, living in hotels for a short period of time. And during that time, there was a lot going on, and I just picked up his books and I read them cover to cover. And after that, I sort of had this epiphany, like, oh, wait a minute, there might not be something wrong with me. There might be something also wrong with society that is causing me all these problems and depression and addiction. So just reading the philosophy kind of, turned my mind over into it. And from then on, I was a pretty avid Satanist.
But before being a Satanist and before you met your husband and all that, were you part of a Christian denomination, or were you always an atheist? Or
No, I've had the only time I tried to be Christian was when I was really young, like 10 or 11. I guess I was always sort of seeking for something, and I thought maybe it would be Christianity because it seemed like it would be for so many other people. But I gave that a try and definitely did not like it, especially considering how women were treated. That was a huge red flag.
Well, so you pick up the book and all of a sudden your boyfriend at the time, it all becomes very attractive, but you already had a taste of Christianity in your mouth, if I can say that. So wasn't there like a bit of a fear? Because they're really quick to install that fear of Lucifer and Satan and demons and all that stuff. So did that come to the back of your mind saying, oh my God, I'm going down the dark path?
No, not really at all, because most of my life I've been like pagan, Wiccan, kind of interested in the occult.
Okay.
I think the biggest difference was that I was not raised Christian. If I had been raised with that being ground into my head, I'm sure I would have had that, kind of fear. But also I think maybe that can cause a little bit of excitement in people as well, right? Like, ooh, they're going to the dark side. I think it does have, a little bit of that seductive edge for people that might have that, in the back of their minds as well.
Yeah, come to the dark side. We have cookies.
We do. We always see that in our, we have info meetings and we say cookies and soda provided. That.
So then you start to write the little book where you, as you said, it's a compilation of all these little notes and little stories you made for that page of the Satanist page, and you decide to put that in the compilation. And when did you release the book?
Let's see. It was released the latter half of 2014. It was released right around the same time that I was starting the Satanic Temple chapter here in Seattle. So they were both kind of at the same time.
We're way late then. I'm way late here. Way late in this interview. Well, in the 4 or 5 years that you had since the release of the book, how has it been received?
I've been really impressed with how much people like it. I'm extremely honored. It's seen a pretty big uptick in sales recently because there was a movie about the Satanic Temple, Hail Satan, that just got released.
Yes.
But I've been really grateful for how much it seems to touch other people's lives. That gives me a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah, it's got great reviews on Amazon, which is a high honor. That's good, a good thing.
Yeah, thanks.
Was there any pushback by Christian communities, not just for your book, but even you yourself as a Satanist, when you go out and eventually people get to know you and they realize you're a Satanist, as you see I don't know, sometimes I look at America, I'm saying you guys are like one step away from being the handmaid's tale. So
one step away, I don't know, it's like half a step, I think.
Yeah, you guys are pretty damn close to becoming a theocracy at this point.
Yeah.
So to be a Satanist amongst all that, and one that was in charge of a chapter and who's written a book, I mean, what kind of experiences have you had lately?
So I definitely became a little bit of a public figure here in Seattle because I was in, the media is very interested when the Satanic Temple does anything. Mm-hmm. So, I've been featured on the front page of the Seattle Times and, various articles and stuff. So people around here have recognized me. Like I'll go out for a walk around the block or I'll go to the food bank, and I've had a bunch of people, usually older people, come up and they actually thank me. They actually are excited about what I'm doing, even though, they're definitely not Satanists. Maybe they've never heard of Satanism before this, but they seem to be really supportive. So for the most part, my personal interactions with people have been really positive.
Really?
Yeah, well, remember we're in Seattle as well.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah. No pitchforks and torches here.
Like if I was in Alabama, those chapters really have their work cut out for them.
How many are in your group? And let me ask you this way: chapters? How many were there when you started, and how many are active in the group now?
Sure. So when we started, we had 5 people. I was the chapter head. I was kind of driving the whole thing. None of those people made it past the first 8 to 9 months, other than me. Oh. So I was kind of left alone at the beginning. But now, I think on our rolls we might have 130 people. But meetings are usually about 30 people, 30 to 35 people show up. And there's a lot of enthusiasm, especially right now because we're heading into our Pride season. So, people are really excited about having a presence at Pride and stuff. So, yeah, we have a pretty good group now. It's pretty active.
Which is great. And I'm sure, as you probably, are well aware of, there are a lot more in the Seattle area who would join, but they're just scared. Yes. So you have a lot of people who, at this point, will support you and know who you are when they see you, but they're, just a little bit hesitant to come out in public and say we not only support you, but we're coming to be part of the group as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That is a huge step.
It is.
Yeah. And actually, a lot of the Satanic Temple's success is not just, our actual members, but we have a lot of allies. So the people that you're talking about, a lot of people in secular groups, people who don't necessarily want to identify as a Satanist, but they do support what we're doing. And so they share information about us. They donate to our campaigns. So the Satanic Temple's success, a lot of it is that sort of cloud of allies that we have supporting us. So I appreciate those people a lot, even if they can't actually come and become a member of the Satanic Temple.
Yeah. Because it's well known that Satanists also kidnap babies and drain all their blood, right? And then they give the atheists, the babies to the atheists to eat. It's well-known fact.
Has the Penny Lane's documentary, which I think is called Hail Satan, with a question mark, has that made a difference in your support, or people who have come to maybe observe the group but not formally joined at all?
We've definitely seen an uptick in interest. The biggest impact has been in actual membership applications. We are actually getting a lot more now than before the documentary was released. So we're seeing that, but I am also seeing messages from people who just want to support us in general and don't necessarily want to become a Satanist. So yeah, that documentary, really shed a light on what we're about for a lot of people who might not have known. So we're seeing a lot more interest and a lot more support.
Yeah, and the funny thing is actually when you look at Satanism and you look at the tenets of Satanism, they're actually more moral than anything Christianity's ever came up with.
It would be interesting if we decided to start a group up here, because I don't know how much you are aware of Abbotsford, but we're sort of like the Bible Belt of Western Canada, maybe Canada in general.
Yeah, exactly.
And if we were to start one, even showing, well, here are the tenets, here are our beliefs, and here's what our activism is all about, we'd still, there'd still be a fair number of people that would want to burn us at the stake.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's it's a little bit dangerous to be a Satanist, especially if you're someplace like where you are. It does come with a lot of baggage. A lot of people won't understand. Some people just hear that word Satan, and even if they're not super religious, they just have, something embedded in the back of their mind from our culture that has to be evil no matter what.
Yes. You get that all the time. Especially as an atheist, you get that all the time. If you don't believe in God, then you automatically believe in Satan. It's like, no, not at all,
Right. Yeah.
And for people that were wondering, I have actually here the 7 Satanic temples, the 7 fundamental tenets, and let's compare this just for fun with the 10 Commandments. Okay. Tenet number 1: one should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. Boom! I think you just knocked out the 10 Commandments right there. Yeah. Number 1, right?
Yeah, there's not much about compassion in the 10 Commandments.
No, there really isn't, or in the Bible altogether.
Lilith, I think you've mentioned several times on some of the podcasts that you've been on and some of the things that have been written about you that you find more kindness in this group than you have in a lot of others.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's our number 1 tenet is compassion.
Yeah.
So the great thing about this community is everyone coming in agrees with those tenets, and compassion is a priority for them. And it really shows. This is a really, close-knit group where people, there's not a lot of interpersonal drama. People really come with a compassionate mindset, and it makes a difference.
Yes. Tenet number 2: the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. Wow. My mind is blown here.
Yeah.
Tenet 3: one body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. There you go. Abortion laws, boom. You just took that one down big time.
Yeah, exactly.
Tenet 4: the freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego your own. Like my father would used to say, your rights begin where the rights of others end, or your rights end where the rights of others begin. Exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Tenet 5: belief should conform to our best scientific understanding of the world. We should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit our beliefs. Whoa! That is beautiful. I think I just got a heart on that one. Right there, all the atheists in the world, all the scientists just went, yes, finally. Number 6, people are fallible. If we make a mistake, we should do our best to rectify it and solve it and resolve any harm that may have been caused. Mm-hmm. People are human. Number 7, every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. Okay. So compare these 7 tenets to the thou shalt not have any engraved images of blah blah. I mean, are you shitting me?
Well, Lilith, I mean, it stands to reason that if you decided you were going to start a new group that had to do with compassion and rights and equality, and you took the tenets out in public and you said, I'm starting a new group and here's what we believe in. Would you be part of this group? And people would say, oh yeah, this is great. And then you said, and we're going to call it the Satanic Temple. And people would go, wait a minute, this is cognitive dissonance here. Now what do I do?
Yes, exactly.
Right. And that's one of the big, powers that we have is to create that cognitive dissonance. Like, wait a minute, if the Satanists are being the good guys here, then what does that make the people who say the Satanists are evil?
Yes.
Kind of got to think about it more. And it's funny you say that because we have literature distributions where we go downtown and we stand next to the Jehovah's Witnesses that are always there, pushing their literature. And we hand out literature. We don't push it on people. But one of our tactics is we have a flyer that on the front are those tenets, and we hand them the flyer with the tenets, and they read through. And exactly like you said, they're like, oh, I agree with all these. And then they turn it over, and there's that giant pentagram on the back. And you can see their face like, wait a minute, I just agreed with Satanist. What's going on?
Is it fair to say that, a big part of Satanism is you guys are basically like expert trolls?
That's how the media has definitely portrayed us. That's not really how we see ourselves. I think that's definitely what comes out in news stories is that aspect. But in reality, we're a pretty,
You guys are genuine when you're actually trying to change the world for the better.
Yeah, and it's just sort of incidental that when we're trying to get the same rights as other religions, the media really gets interested in it. It makes for good stories. So our goal isn't really to troll. It's just to have the same rights as anybody else. Mm-hmm. But somehow that's super controversial right now, right?
Of course. And you can totally tell when you read the tenets there. You can totally tell that these are something, the wording, what's included in there is obviously from the 21st century, right? Or 20th century, something close anyway. When you read something out of the Hebrew Bible, I mean, it just smells of Bronze Age, right? It just, it is so primitive in their thinking. It's like, how can you possibly compare? And so it's amazing that people would think that somehow these words they're not even eloquent half the time would somehow be from divine inspiration when you have right here from the Satanic Temple something that is demonstrably superior in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it kind of blows people's minds. I've had people tell me that the tenets are more Christ-like than what fundamentalist Christians are like today. We've had people say that.
Absolutely.
Well, they align much more with humanism than they do with anything else. I mean, if you're a humanist and you look at these tenets, you'd think that they came right from a humanist manifesto rather than from another.
Maybe we could say that. Maybe Satanists are very colorful humanists.
Yeah.
They just have a sense of style. They have a sense of show. I love that.
I know. Lilith, what do you think? Are you a more colorful humanist?
I would say I'm a less colorful humanist because mostly I just wear black. But in general, I've heard Satanism described as atheist but with style.
Yeah.
In so many ways we are like humanism. The biggest difference is that embrace of Satan as our symbol. So, most humanists aren't going to choose Satan as their symbol and their narrative for their life. So that's a big difference with us. Oh, and the other thing is we don't necessarily want to become mainstream. There's a sense in a lot of secular groups that you'd like to, sort of spread the atheist gospel and get more people involved. Satanists, we understand that very few people will actually want to take on that label. And we're okay with that. Like, we're okay with being the outsiders, the people that society rejected. We claim that and we use it to empower ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, let's get back to your book here.
Oh, sure.
Let's get back to your book. And like you said, you've had some really good reception from your book. It's been out for a little while. And especially with the events, people are coming at you. They're not giving you grief.
Not so far. I mean, every so often I will get messages that say you're going to hell, or, some other kind of rambling, crazy Christian thing. But yeah, for the most part, it's been really positive.
I love it when a Christian tells me I'm going to hell. So I tell them, no, I've got VIP tickets to Valhalla. I said, they have a bigger party and the women are way hotter. Forget hell. Hell is like too hot for me. And they're so dumbfounded by this. It's like, what do you mean VIP tickets to Valhalla? Valhalla doesn't exist. Yeah, neither does hell. But do you think your book is out there is helping inspire other potential Satanists or at least atheists to come out and be more active in the non-faith?
Oh, yes, definitely. I actually get a fair number of messages from people who tell me that my book was their introduction to Satanism.
Nice.
And it sort of prompted them to get involved more. And that means so much to me. If I could even touch one person's life, it means so much to me. So to hear that, it really warms my heart.
Welcome to the Satanic Temple. Here's a goat's head. Part of me would love to actually be a Satanist because I would so play that. I would play that card so much. But I think everybody around me would try to disown me at this point, which is
it wouldn't take long.
No, it wouldn't take long. Not much longer than it's already gone. Just as an atheist. So is there any other? You said you were in the works of making a second book at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that one.
Okay, so the first book I wrote mostly before I was in the Satanic Temple. At the very end, I was in it and I added some of that into the book. But now I'd like to write a book that is mostly about the Satanic Temple path. As opposed to, before I was working from Anton LaVey's work. Uh-huh. So the first book was a collection of personal essays. What I'm working on now is sort of a primer for satanic practice. Mm-hmm. It's a very personalized thing. There's no Bible or set of rituals or ceremonies or anything that Satanists have to do. It's all kind of left to the individual. But I do want to give out something that kind of explains the larger ideas of romantic Satanism, some of the actions that you can take, and kind of urges people to create their own personal paths. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Romantic Satanism, what does that mean?
Yeah, so Satanic Temple Satanism is based in the Romantic period. There were some Romantic writers and revolutionaries that took... are you familiar with Paradise Lost?
No, I've lost it somewhere.
Okay, so in the Romantic Revolutionary period, there were a number of poets like Shelley and Blake that really started seeing the symbol of Satan as a symbol for rebellion against tyranny. Mm-hmm. It was the Revolutionary era. The Enlightenment had happened. So in the Romantic period, they kind of reinterpreted Paradise Lost as, kind of a tale of rebellion against unjust authority. Mm-hmm. It was the Enlightenment when people were starting to shake off the bonds of the monarchy and of the church and started questioning those God-given hierarchies.
Yes.
And so we take those Enlightenment ideals, reason, compassion, individual rights, and that forms the basis of our philosophy now. And just like these poets were revolutionaries, we see ourselves as having the same duty, as having that duty to drive forward society to be a more just society for everyone.
Interesting.
So what's your working title at this point?
I'm sort of thinking the Satanic Handbook. There's something called the Satanic Bible, which, was kind of the foundation of modern Satanism in the 1960s. I don't want to make something that's like a Bible, that's like you have to do this. What I'm more interested in is, sort of a slim volume that just gives you some suggestions and points you to making your own path.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's kind
instead of lighting just normal candles in the pentagram, light some Satan candles, Make it more appealing for you and the demon you summon.
Yeah. What deadline have you set for yourself for getting it published?
Oh, my gosh. I don't know. I'm saying that if I can get it published in the next year, I'm going to be doing good. It's really hard because I have really bad chronic pain, so I can't really sit more than a half hour a day to do the writing.
Oh, goodness.
So I'm kind of working against that, but I am making some pretty good progress right now. So I'm hopeful that you'll see it out in the next year.
Fantastic. And when it does come out, you'll have to come back and introduce it to us for sure.
Yeah,
that'd be fantastic.
Oh yeah, it's a date already. No pressure. I mean, this is something that comes from your heart, and so you need to take all the time you need to get it right. But when you do, come on back and talk with us.
Yeah. So the book is called The Happy Satanist, and if people want to find it, where do they find it?
You can find it on Amazon. Just search for The Happy Satanist, and you'll find it.
Yes. Perfect. No, I'm not going to get into that right now. I was thinking of getting into something else, but I don't want to. You've already been with us for 38 minutes now. I don't want to take too much of your time. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Lilith, for being with us today. Really, really appreciate that.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks for taking the time to come and be with us today.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, likewise, for the chance to talk with you guys. It's always a lot of fun, so thank you.
Excellent. But before I let you go, I got to have you say, hi, this is Lilith Starr, and I took a left at the valley.
Hi, this is Lilith Starr, and I took a left at the valley.
Fantastic. And that was Lilith Starr, the Satanist.
She's a lot of fun.
Yes, she is.
The Happy Satanist.
The Happy Satanist. Well, she's not happy because of the ants right now.
No, it's great because, she's so wide-ranging in terms of, her personal story and then taking over the group and being part of that the group that's really making changes. It's a great backstory, and she's a fun person to interview, so it's great.
It can be easy, even in Seattle, to be in the United States and openly declare yourself a Satanist. And it just can't be. I mean, sometimes you just got to wonder if she goes somewhere down south, if people are going to chase her with pitchforks and torches and stuff like that.
I mean, you really have to think, as brave as we are in some ways, and we're here in Abbotsford, would we come out as Satanists even though we agree with everything they're doing? Mm-hmm. Would we take on that label?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it really depends on what you plan to do in the future. For example, if you're...
live.
Well, yeah, live is one of them, but, it depends on the city, the situation you're in. Yeah. Let's say, for example, you're somebody who's got political leanings. We talk about politics on the show a lot, and all of a sudden you decide, what if I ran for politics? But all of a sudden, if you're part of the Church of Satan or the Satanic Temple or something like that, you might as well kiss your political career goodbye.
Well, I think
people are just not ready for this.
Yeah, I think it has to do with risk, and between the two of us, I have little risk because I'm beyond working. I'm retired. My family already knows who I am. I'm not in the market, to find a whole other group of friends. The ones that I have are great. So for me, taking on the label would be extremely low risk. I'm eccentric and a little nuts anyway, people wouldn't think that that's a big shift. Whether they would shun me or whether they would, tend to avoid taking me with them, to church on Sunday, that's it. But with you being employed and still being an active part of the dynamic community here, it's totally different.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In other words, too, also for you, people will just be afraid that you might just kill them and snap their neck anyway because you do that so well.
I do have, I'm pretty forceful in terms of,
the satanic
my
assassin.
abilities.
I love it.
But even so, even if I was just sort of your typical little old lady, I still would have very low, and I probably would take on the label just because it would be an additional way to say, these are my beliefs, I'm in your face, live with it. I'm happy.
Do you think that if you ever actually became a Satanist and it was all on the open, that people, because of your age, that people would actually label you as a witch? Like literally a witch?
Well, either that or the first stages of Alzheimer's. One of the two. At my age, it could go either way.
Oh, thank you so much, Nancy. And thank you for listening. And thank you to our guest, Lilith Starr, for being with us. You can always find us at leftofthevalue.com. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, at LETV Podcast. You can email us at leftatvalley@outlook.com. You can send your complaints to Nancy on the third floor, but beware the incoming spell.
I like incoming spells.
Or she might forget.
Better. Yeah.
She might forget about it. Give us a 5-star review wherever you find us. It helps us and it helps others find the show. You can be like our friend Freethinker215 and support us on Patreon/LATV. All right, coming up next week, Canada Day is around the corner.
That's right.
So we're doing all things all Canadian next week.
That's going to be fun.
We should, yes, and we should have
non-controversial.
Our first time in the history of our show, we'll actually have a genuine politician with us.
Oh,
Paul Manley, who was elected from the Greens, will spend a few minutes with us to tell us what it's like in Ottawa.
Oh,
so that would be very, very interesting.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's going to be, I mean, we've interviewed some like political leanings and stuff like that, but an actual elected politician, that's a first for us.
Now, we're talking about a brave guy, right?
Yes. And in July, we'll be talking to Amy Cool and the Ginger Snaps. And we'll also be talking to lawyer Andrew Torres of Opening Arguments. We'll be talking about the whole abortion issue. And then we'll have the legendary voice of Seth Andrews as well. And we'll be talking about free speech. It'll be interesting to talk to him about the whole Quebec thing that we just talked. See how he feels about that.
Yeah.
That's going to be very...
Maybe give him a heads up, so he has a chance to look into it.
Yeah. Might not be a bad idea to do such a thing. So, lots of good things coming down the pipe, obviously. Perfect.
Oh, great.
Anything else I need to add?
Oh, no, it's just been great, just the two of us.
Yes.
Every now and then we get a chance to do that. I miss the girls,
but
Yeah, I miss the girls, but it's fun just you and me.
We pulled another one nonetheless. Thank you so much, dear. Until next time.
I think the reason is apparent. You do what you're told and believe in the God assigned by your parents. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel.
Yeah, I've had chronic pain for many years, and it just kind of gets worse and worse. So yeah, I've got really bad back pain most of the time.
I'm not sure listening to our show is going to help that. It might give you some worse chronic pain.
Well, we're a pain in the butt. Your back is okay. The little lower, that's going to start bothering you.
Left in the valley, hard on your anus.
There you go.
Oh boy.
Thousands of children are raped by priests, and since they're holy men of God, they get away scot-free. And the Pope does his very best to keep it on the hush. Don't wanna affect business, he loves money too much. We know that they love the kids, but how the fuck can we protect them while they planning to molest them? We teaching them to respect them.
Fuck that.
The system is broke down, working backwards, and the only action or tactic I plan to practice now is to attack them. The parties of God's hands are bloodstained, millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone, speak your mind, time to let it be known.